Hello and welcome to Insights, everyone. I'm Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
On this episode of Insights, I intend to throw up a conversation on the Japa frenzy. I mean, it's quite it's a trending issue right now, as most Nigerians, and I mean young and middle-aged Nigerians, are reported to be fleeing the country, as a matter of fact, for better life in overseas countries. That's what has been termed the Japa frenzy. And of course, we'll be putting this against the number of Nigerians returning from the diaspora. Another area, or another issue I intend to look at is the issue of public investments in education. I would pursue a conversation on that issue also on this episode. Elizabeth, of course, would round off our talks with another promising conversation as well. Elizabeth?
Well, of course, I decided to actually seek the opinion of a media practitioner on the current social realities confronting us as a nation. And then we defined the role of responsible journalism as a panacea to nation building.
Very well then. Let's start off the conversation. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
It's not cash transfer. It's not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate
You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
These and applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
You know, there are diverse reasons adduced for the Japa frenzy in Nigeria, but whatever reasons they are, I think the underlying issue is that most people who leave do so in search of a better life. But, you know, there's another dimension to these arguments which emerged quite recently, adducing that more Nigerians in the diaspora are returning back to the country. So we will be discussing the Japa frenzy versus the home strings, the trending increasing return of Nigerians in the diaspora, also as it's been described by the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission. My guest is Reverend Father Emeka Christ Obiezu. He is the director of Augustinian Center for Advocacy, Justice, Development, and is also the national coordinator of the Civil Society Network on Migration and Development. It's called CSO NetMade. Father Chris joins us, of course, via Zoom from Enugu. Thank you so much for joining us on Insight. It's been a while. Good to see you again, Father.
Good to see you, Nnamdi. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Father. Thank you for asking. I'm sure you have heard all sorts of arguments over this Japa frenzy, especially amongst young and middle-aged Nigerians. Which side of the fence, which side of the argument do you fall when it comes to this rather unfortunate yet fashionable trend? Some Nigerians express solidarity towards the mass movement, while some would stress the need for Nigerians to stay in the country and build this country, our nation, together, citing the no place like home cliche. Give me a breakdown of what could very well motivate those who fall in either groupings or category.
Oh, thank you again, Nnamdi, and thank you for the good work you do in Insight program. Each moment to have opportunity to talk on migration issue is always exciting because not just because it's a trending issue, but because it's something that is at the center of our contemporary society, especially as it involves Nigerians. I don't want to be put in a box by your question.
Okay. Break out of the box, Father. Break out.
No, yeah. I'm getting out of the box, actually. I don't have to be on either side of the fence, but I think it is good to present a balanced perspective on the issue for us to be able to appreciate the dynamics involved in the Japa friends and in the reality of humanity moving, especially when it comes to seeking for better life. Again, having said that, also, I want to disabuse the mind of those who equate patriotism with the issue of question of living or staying, which is not part of patriotism, and it should not be discussed from that angle.
Okay.
Yes, the survival instinct is when something, in a condition that is not favorable to you, you necessarily have to move. And it is also actually part of patriotism to save yourself so that you can save your country, especially when
that's a fresh and interesting angle to it.
Yeah, because if we look at what migration is actually doing in the case of Nigeria, you'll find out that those who have left Nigeria have also continuously contributed to the well-being of the country.
Not everyone, I should say.
Yeah, a good number of them contribute positively to the building of the country from the remittances to do.
Yes,
so
I can agree to that.
Being the case, I mean, we are talking on the issue of patriotism.
Yes.
But the question at hand is, how do we understand this reality and what do we do with it? If I may come in, I mean, if I stay on that conversation, I think what I have to say again is that it belongs to the human person to move.
Okay.
To move for any reason that makes you want to move. Sometimes for those who live in what we would call established or stable economy, they also could just move for the sake of changing environment and trying something different.
But for the bulk of people who move from Nigeria to other parts of the world, well, it does not seem that is the reason. They do not want to just change environment, Father. They want to change their lives.
Yeah, sure. What I said here is I'm actually explaining one dimension of the movement to also bring into the conversation that it's not only Nigerians that move.
And I get that.
So those who are moving for change of environment, change of trying something better, as I said, are those who are living in stable economy. So they are not pressured, they are not forced. They are living out of their own free will, and they do it at their leisure. But the type we have in Nigeria, especially in the current time, is the one that you could describe as a mad rush that is kind of running out of what people could call a strangulating situation, as some of them say, those who engage in this. If I don't live now, I feel like I will die. So they want to run away as fast as they can and as quick as they can to live. And the reasons they give is that the situation here does not provide for them any opportunity or hope of surviving.
Well, let me throw something into this mix again for you, Father, so maybe you can just take off. You can also take off from there, because it's quite interesting that a good number, a significant number of those who leave actually live using the legal, regular routes, and they do not live illegally.
Yes, yeah, again, those are the issue of balancing the narrative, as we say. Popular narrative from the angle of those who work mainly on irregular migration will paint the picture that many Nigerians are migrating irregularly. But just a year back, there was this report launched, the Africa Migration Report, which was launched in Kenya. And the Director General of IOM, the International Organization for Migration, at that launching, also revealed that it is not true that Africans migrate irregularly at the rate people say. That the truth is that we migrate regularly at 94%. 94% of our migration is done regularly. And as right now, if you go to many embassies, especially the embassies of countries to which Nigeria migrates more, Canada, UK, US, Australia, New Zealand, if you go there, you see a line up of Nigerians seeking for visa. If you go to IOM office on their medical exam center, you see a good number of Nigerians on daily basis, sometimes in their thousands, going for their medical report to be able to migrate regularly. So
I hear you, Father. I hear you loud and clear. Just so we can move this conversation along, I get that you're saying to us here that, look, it doesn't make me less patriotic if I decide and if I get up today and up and move perhaps not just myself but move my entire family, say to the UK for instance. No, it doesn't make me any less patriotic than the man who has decided to stay here and continue the struggle. Is that it, Father? That's essentially what.
That's exactly what I'm saying. Right? That is exactly what I'm saying. Every man or every woman who is responsible for his family, and you have children for that matter, would want to bequeath something very sustainable to your family. And you wouldn't want to sit and watch your family all suffer, and that's an opportunity for you to get out to somewhere and improve their life. And you give a different type of interpretation of patriotism to say, I better stay here and die than to do something right other place.
Okay, Father, we'll talk about the negative effects of these. I mean, when it becomes so much so that it becomes a challenge for a country or becomes a challenge for a country's national development. But let me quickly, before we go to that, let me quickly play you a soundbite from Honorable Abike Dabiri Erewa. She is the chairperson of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission. She talked about this issue a couple of, some time ago, quite recently, where she was addressing members of the press at the State House. Let's just have that video.
The second and third generation of Nigerians, that one we're passionate about, because you see these young people, I mean, one of them said to me that our uncle said never ever ever have come to Nigeria, but he came to Nigeria and he didn't go back again. And he said, uncle, but why? Yes, because he's now doing a lot of things back home and he's making more money. He's even exporting things back to some parts of Europe. So we are focusing on our, we call it the Home Strings program. Aisha is not here, but again, there's a staff working on this. We call it the Home Strings program for the second and third generation of Nigerians. We provide a platform for them. I told you of the guy who came from the UK. He came here at 8 and now came when he was 35. And when he came, he was crying. And this is not what he expected. And he has called me like 10 times. He's doing a program again for youth. And we're working on something with him. And I think it's also there are many of them. It's just that for time, we can't be mentioning them individually.
Our message essentially is that, I mean, even though we say that the Nigerians are mostly interested in seeking greener pastures, I mean, codenamed the Japa that we are talking about, most Nigerians are returning from the diaspora. I mean, I do not know. I don't know what the figures are, Father. But do you? I mean, in terms or what the relative terms are. But is this something you concur with? Do you agree with our findings, and to what extent? And if you do disagree, why so?
Again, I don't want to come into the situation of agreeing or not agreeing. The question is it a reality that we are experiencing? Yes, it is a reality we are experiencing in the migration discourse and in Nigeria and other places, mostly African countries. There is a drive from different diaspora communities of reaching home to do something. Last year, we saw in the case of Ghana, a lot of people came back home to Ghana to do a lot of development. These are diaspora. I'm happy she was talking about the second and third generation diaspora, which is actually where we might also need to pay more attention, because most of the remittances we're getting from Nigerian diaspora today are coming from the first generation. And in as much as, again, this is good always to put things right, like in the perspective, in as much as there is this reality of a good number coming home, there is also a huge number who are completely disinterested, who dissuade their parents from continuing to do anything in Nigeria. Those people are out there too. So if we do not engage them in such a way that we either ignite the desire or the interest of the homeland and sustain what their parents are doing, down the road we might also suffer a loss in terms of the rate of diaspora investment or diaspora remittances that are coming back home. So I'm happy that the NIDCOM is beginning to engage the second and third generation of diaspora. But I think that that engagement should be more integral and organic in the nature that it does not just single out the few who have indicated interest at doing something. In every worst situations, there is always a one-off thing that some individual cash in and do. But a good perspective should also have a holistic approach into that direction. But that being said, I don't still really think that the number of diasporas coming back home to invest also either denigrates or minimizes the reality of this huge number of persons leaving Nigeria. You know,
I was going to ask you to balance that out, but since you're doing that already, please do go ahead.
Yes, in 2019 there were over 12,000 Nigerians that migrated to Canada regularly. Right?
Yes.
Just in 1 year. And with all the COVID thing that you think people will be afraid of the Western world, as I mentioned at the beginning, go to the embassies. I mean, if you're talking with somebody and you open a gist on terms of the future of each person here, everybody's asking you, do you have an insight? I did a program for even officials of high level in a high-level cadre in the country. And I threw a joke. They didn't know it was a joke. I said, oh, I could actually help you fix your visa issues because I have contacts with some of these agencies. And before I knew it, people were already coming over to me to say, oh, how can I really engage you in this?
Maybe they wanted visas for visiting, Father. Maybe
no,
you did not understand. Maybe they were joking as well.
It's a joke, sure. And I wish I was making a joke, but I was using it to test the waters.
I'd like for us to end on this note, Father. I mean, we have overshot our time. My director is in my ear telling me that I have overshot the time. But of course, this is an ongoing conversation. I know you should be back to town sometime real soon. As soon as that happens, we would invite you into the studio so we can continue this conversation. Reverend Father Emeka Chris Obiezu, Director, Augustinian Center for Advocacy, Justice and Development, and also National Coordinator, Civil Society Network on Migration and Development, CSO NetsMate. I would like to thank you so much, Father, for coming on Insight. It's been a delight speaking with you on this matter.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, Landy. Thank you.
My next conversation is education-based, and I would like to question quality and standards, investment and self-financing opportunities for tertiary institutions in Nigeria. I know that's an entire gamut, but I would attempt to get some input from my guest, Dr. Niyi Sumonu. He is National Coordinator, Congress of University Academics, that's CONWA. CONWA, of course, is a new academic union which emerged in February 2018 and since April 2018 applied to the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment for registration as a trade union in the Nigerian public universities. Dr. Sumonu, welcome to Insight.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Nigerians. Thank you for having us on this platform today.
Before we get knee-deep into it, I would appreciate your responses to two quick questions. One, of course, is what is the current status of your registration as a union, and why has that stalled since you applied? And two, and even more importantly, why are you perceived as a spoiler for the more popular university-based union, and I'm talking about ASU?
Yeah, once again, thank you very much for having me this afternoon. The Congress of University Academics, as you have rightly said in your introduction, which we appreciate, was formed in February 2018, applied for registration in April 2018. In between that period and August 8, 2022, we held two public meetings, one with a ministerial committee set up by the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment on January 22, 2020, to defend the reason why CONWA should be registered. By 19th November of the same year, that is 19th November 2020, a public meeting was held with the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment, with CONWA delegates. And at that meeting, the Honorable Minister of Labor and Employment did give the ministerial committee set up 4 weeks to actually round up its report. And since that time, till August 8, 2022, when the Honorable Minister of State for Labor and Employment did say in one of his media engagement on some other issues and had to deal with the issue of education in the university, had to then say that CONWA had met all the requirements for registration. So at that point, it was the very first time we'll be getting the information that the requirements that needed to be met had actually been met by CONWA.
Okay.
So I think the best person or the best agent to respond to why CONWA has not been registered would be the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment.
Okay.
And I can only use this medium to call on the federal government through the Ministry of Labor and Employment to do the needful and to protect our interests as freeborns of this country, free citizens, to right of association and register CONWA. Now, I will link that with the next question you
please
ask. And that next question, honestly, I'm not taking it I'm not taking it lightly, with profound respect that in some quarters,
I'm very sure you know that a lot has been said in that direction. In fact, as a matter of fact, a lot of people have described you as that. ASU has described you as that.
Okay, I will respond to that. That's one of my duties here. The very first way I will react to it is that CONWA was formed in 2018. There were issues in that union preceding the year 2018. And the one that actually culminated into the formation of CONWA started in 2016 and can be broadly divided into two. One has to do with constitutional violation by the leadership of that union. And we raised issues. And eventually, after different committees, some of them reporting lies about what transpired. And one of the last committees, which was the Committee of Trustees, then reported what actually transpired. And in that reportage, they agreed with our complaints about some persons in the leadership of that union. And what they did was that in that agreement with us, in all the allegations we leveled against them, in that agreement, they said, okay, we agree that these guys actually committed this offense.
Okay.
And what they did to them was to suspend them. But they said our own violation was that there was no provision for caretaker committee in the union's rules of engagement. They found us culpable on that, and what they would do to us to summarily expel all of us. And when you expel somebody or group of persons, they are under the liberty of the Section 40 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended to associate freely. It is as a result of that, it's when that punishment, when that expulsion was pronounced, that we are treated under the banner, under the platform of the Congress of University Academics. Okay. And as law-abiding citizens, we apply to the Federal Ministry of Labor and Employment for registration.
So at some point in the past, your interest, there was a misalignment in your interest, which resulted in your pulling out and forming a sister university-based organization.
We didn't pull out, sir. We were expelled.
I get that. You see, we've gone down this road, so let's quickly clear up some issues. So I know your position on the lingering ASUU strike, and that Conwa believes that concessions that are earned by ASUU after every strike over the last, or over decades, I should say, have amounted to small victories when weighed against the systematic destruction of the local and global image of university education in Nigeria. Your organization, Conwa, your position is that deployment of strike should be contemplated only when all other options are failed, and that they should not appear to be motivated by a desire to cause maximum damage. And yet, you agree with ASUU on the condition of service of academics in Nigeria, which you have described yourself as being very poor and pitiable. In fact, you even agree with ASUU on the challenges with IPs and the need for a better payment option. So it will seem that in principle, you agree with the essence, the core essence of ASUU's ongoing campaign, but not the method being deployed. How would you, your organization, your union, achieve the most of the intended targets, like the ones that ASUU wants to achieve, perhaps with minimum pain?
Thank you very much. Before I go into that, I want to correct an impression. With respect to condition of service, we agreed it is very poor. It is a pitiable condition. With respect to payment platform, it is our candid view that payment platform will not operate itself. And no payment platform, no software, which payment platform is one, is 100% perfect. No software has been. And that we as academics, we as thinkers, we as researchers can interrogate, in this case, payment platform, and bring that interrogation to bear for all the stakeholders concerned to be in the know, to be that the fact that there will be no mistaken identity with respect to its performance.
Okay.
And that if that performance is such that it does more harm than good, it will be crystal clear that such payment platform can be discarded. But payment platform that finds itself in the hands of a good guy can always be improved upon. Remember that I just said that no payment platform can be 100% perfect.
And I get that.
So I need to correct that impression. Now, going forward, with respect to method,
yes,
as thinkers and as researchers, I hope it doesn't come across as belittling our calling as academics, as thinkers, in the sense that when you deploy a method over 40 years now, you should evaluate that method, whether it is achieving the purpose for which it is deployed.
You know, there's this saying that when you do the same thing time and again, Dr. Sumonu, there's this very popular saying that when you do something the same way time and again, over and over, and you keep getting the same results, I mean, you're absolutely setting up yourself for failure.
That statement is actually credited to a physicist, Albert Einstein, that if you do certain things over and over, you are expecting a different result. That is some kind of insanity. He did say. So for over 40 years, we have tried the method of industrial actions, open and close in some quarters. One op-ed writer just alluded to that as some kind of open and close method. What we are not saying here that it has no gain at all. It has done some good. But when you put it side by side with the harm it is doing to the system, it is humongous. It is unimaginable. And to that, even with that method over time, it is finally resolved, before we go into that vicious cycle, it's finally resolved at a table. That means that you cannot brush aside the impact or the importance of discussion, the importance of engagement.
Okay.
What we then discover with that kind of engagement is that parties come to that kind of meeting as if it's coming to meet its adversaries. Already, that kind of meeting is lopsided even before you get into it. All stakeholders, government, unions, in fact, the government has not even expanded that as much as we want. There are other critical stakeholders in the academic environment. In the
What would Conwa do differently to achieve this same results or these same targets, and yet not inflict them as much pain as our students who are at home now are feeling, and even the university community generally?
There are two broad methods that we are proposing for now, and yet it is inexhaustive. Because as long as you have life, as long as you can research on things, you can discuss, you are bound to have more headways, more solutions. But for the purpose of this discussion, I will look at two broad ones.
Please.
The first one was the one I was talking about in my thought earlier, which has to do with engagement,
dialogue,
with discussions. You can extend that to what we call lobbying.
Okay.
The people in government don't see what academics see in the university environment. Lobbying will make you persuasive method to make them see what we are seeing with facts and figures, qualitative. And I can give an example in that with respect to the Mahmoud Yakubu-led committee, NEET assessment committee that went around the universities in Nigeria in 2012. So on one side, our engagement has to be more productive. It doesn't have to be like you are meeting your adversary, you are going to talk to your enemy. We're all stakeholders. And you need to expand that net of engagement to go beyond two parties. You have to expand it to get into the students who are actually bearing the brunt here. You have to also extend it to the parents. You have to also extend it to alumni body. They also have stakes. They are universities. They don't want their alma mater to go down the drain. So on the side of engagement, we are proposing that you expand that net of engagement so that it will be more productive, all encompassing, more engaging. The other side is that we are already in a democratic dispensation. You recollect that method, we have done it with military government. That method, we have done it with democratic dispensation, with different parties in power. We have been getting the same result. Get agreement, renege on agreement, the decline industrial action, that cycle. We have moved that cycle over and over again. So, because we're in a democratic dispensation, we can test the instrument of our democracy. Legislation, for example. Some legislations that will help to strengthen industrial. If we have it already, we should invoke it. Invoke it by legal means, for example. Compelling the government, for example, to do the needful. And if the government goes against the court judgment, that will be contempt of the court.
I hear you, Dr. Simone.
So in this side, I'm advocating for two things on this other side, and which is legislative tools and legal means. Legal means can compel government to do what is afraid of doing.
I hear you, Dr. Simonu. You know, we often talk about the effect of repeated closure of schools and academic programs on students' learning effectiveness. Yet again, we cannot ignore the imperatives for sound investment in education and its long-term implications for an equally sound educational system that engenders national growth and development. So, is it true when ASU says things like the best of libraries in public institutions are 5 to 10 years behind in academic literatures, and that laboratories are bereft of essentials while academic journals are fast depleting? If that is truly the case, how can universities effectively discharge their responsibility of producing their own core of academic personnel, that is the intellectual resource pool or base that will, through scientific research, generate new knowledge and innovation to solve some of our national development issues and problems.
Thank you very much. I will pick it up from your last concluding statement, which is, no nation can develop beyond its ivory towers. Now, in 2012, in the earlier thought, I alluded to the fact that a Professor Mahmoud Yakubu-led committee went around the universities. Then we had 74 universities that time, 37 in the federal university, 37 in the state universities. They were able to go to around 60-something of it. All I'm saying here is that they put pen to paper, they put things down in black and white. Fast forward, we're in 2022 today. Our calling as academics is to then do one of the following. One is to look at the rot that was discovered in 2012, the government intervention, as the government intervened at all by way of funding. If the answer is yes, let us be qualitative. Let us be truthful. How much of that rot has been addressed? Let's put pen to paper. Let's put it black and white. In fact, if all variables are constant, that is, if the government had attended to all, university education or education generally cannot remain static. You continue to invest in it, because what you need yesterday can be 2 years ago, can be a year, in terms of impacting knowledge. It's not what you need this year. Life is so dynamic, education is moving at a very rapid rate.
And that is true.
But coming back to my earlier thought, the thing is, the rot we've discovered in 2012, we all agree to that because it is documented.
Yeah.
We need to document the effort the government had made. It would be good to just say, government, you have not done enough, with fact and figure, and put fact and figure to, this is what you need to do again to improve on this and this. We need to do that as thinkers.
You know what, Dr. Sumonu?
So everything, pardon me, please.
Yes,
everything
please.
Boils down to
please
funding.
Land on your thoughts.
Everything boils down to funding. And in this funding, government, by provision of Section 18, subsection 1, 2, 3 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended, government will have to play its part with respect to funding. And I understand education is on concurrent list. Government at the national level will do that. Government at state level will do that. And we can, as academics, we really need to have counterpart funding to augment this funding that will solve the problem. So we can do that through the alumni body. We can do that through what is called educational philanthropy. We can do that through endowments. I'll give an example, which is in the public space now. About a couple of weeks back, one individual, whether it is his agency that he heads, donated about $1 million to University College Hospital in Ibadan. So our universities, first generation, second generation, can tap into that base of alumni. And our internally generated revenue sources can also, show the deficit of funding for us. So it has to be a multifaceted approach with respect to funding.
I agree with you to a very large extent. Yeah. The issue of self-financing is something you and I will talk about if we still have time down the line. But of course, we're still on the subject of funding. So I'm sure you're aware of the UN's recent advice to Nigeria to increase its budgetary provision for education from its present or current 7% to 20% with clear accountabilities on delivery. I'm also sure that you would have heard of the minister's response listing major investments in the educational sector. In fact, the minister did say that the current administration has expended more than 6 trillion naira in capital and recurrent expenditure in the education sector in the last 7 years. It did also say that that is in addition to other interventions from the Tertiary Education Trust Fund and the Universal Basic Education Commission, amounting to over 3 trillion in capital investment. My question to you, Dr. Sumonu, is why isn't this enough to change minds yet? And whether these interventions are as impactful as they should be I'm asking you this because, of course, I mean, you're an insider in the sector, and you're somewhere where you should have experienced all of this investment.
Thank you very much. What I said the other time is what I'm going to repeat here. And I said it the other time with respect to colleagues in the academic environment, that the intervention of the government has to be documented and put in the public space through the journalists, through the media. The government will also have to come out clean, because here actually the government is having a huge trust deficit as a result of having an agreement, reneging on agreement. The government will need to document University A, so amount of money, University B, so amount of money. And before you disburse money or you release money to the university, it is assumed that you will have a budget on what the university A, B, C, D, E, F plans to use the money to do. So you then do some kind of retirement. Let the government also document all it has done in terms of intervention. Let's put it side by side and see where the truth lies. All other stakeholders need to be educated in this regard, so that we then take decisions together moving forward.
Dr. Sumonu, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I mean, this is quite unfortunate. With a lot of issues I wanted to take you on, political issues as well. I mean, it's quite, but we'll try to create a platform for you to come on our program, so we can have plenty of time to talk about some of these issues. But very quickly, and on a final note, and this is not an open-ended question, it's a closed-ended question, so I would limit it to a yes or no. Do you think that education should be a big issue as we approach the 2023 elections? Do you think it should be a big issue on the ballot?
Education without recourse to politics. Education should be very important to any nation that wants to develop. That's the way I'm going to respond to it.
Dr. D. Sumonu, National Coordinator, Congress of University Academics, Cornwall, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Insight. It's been a pleasure.
I want to appreciate you most sincerely for having us on this program.
Thank you so much. Up next is Elizabeth Omoruyi for the rest of the program.
The media play an important role in national development, improving the political, economic and social lives of the people. The purpose of journalism is to provide citizens with the information they need to make the best possible decisions about their lives and communities. The mass media remain the catalyst to nation building, functioning as the watchdog of society to transmit heritage and cultural values. Considering the present global realities, governments, civil organizations and individuals rely on the media to set agenda to promote good governance, protect lives and property. On this segment, we will analyze media reportage as panacea to nation building. My guest, Dr. Arume Salifo, Executive Director, Africa Youth Growth Foundation, will set the conversation. Dr. Arume, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
Thank you so much for having me. My privilege and pleasure. Thank you.
All right, you are a key player in the media business. For 16 years, your foundation has been analyzing the media. Do you think the media have done enough in performing their statutory functions?
Yes, given the environment and, of course, the challenges, one would come to the conclusion that the media truly has lived up to its mandate and, of course, the expectations of the people, the society. That is not to say that there are no gaps or rooms for improvement. We still have a lot of funding gaps, technological gaps. We still have even capacity gap in terms of investigating aspect of journalism, and also the need to have more independence, the freedom to be able to express themselves, because it's one of the critical elements of free media. And I think these are some of the things that I feel strongly should be improved upon if we are to truly, expect the best from our media. And of course, the media is a global system, and for the Nigerian media to compete globally, and of course to have fair representation of the quality of media reportage against the global standard, we need to actually look into some of these gaps in order to be able to remain above board and of course be competitive globally. Yeah.
Before I take you on the issue of contents, media contents, you talked about a free media and quality reportage. Don't you think there has to be a check on free media? Looks like it's really not playing its role.
Well, to a certain extent, I will agree with you. But again, there is that thin line between free media and having to check the freedom of the media, particularly with the introduction of social media, because we have the traditional media and we have the social media. So if you contrast these two, you will realize that the two are potentially very powerful, and of course, realistically, they are also very impactful on what happens out there on a daily basis. What people consume today is both from the traditional media and the social media. While the traditional media is highly regulated and of course controlled or supervised, the social media is still yet to have similar kind of oversight. And of course, because of the fact that the social media component of journalism is still strongly individualized, and to that extent the regulation and the supervision becomes almost difficult for government to embark upon. I know there have been a lot of the attempts both at the National Assembly level and even within the civil space to advocate and of course escalate the advocacy around the need to actually have media social media, censorship or regulation. That again, met a lot of resistance, over the last 2-3 years, particularly from the civil society and of course the other key users of the social media. And I think broadly there should be a midpoint, to strike a balance between what the social media freedom should look like and what the regulation should look like. It's a thin line, but I think somewhere down the line they should be able to strike a balance, because it's important, particularly with the challenges of fake news and other issues around social media use and freedom.
It's a thin line. If we consider the realities before us as a nation, where do contents play out?
Funding is important. If you want to have the right content, you've got to have enough funding to be able to support the drive for innovation, research, and of course content management. For example, you have the need to travel to Jos to cover a report, and you don't have the funding to travel all the way. That alone is enough challenge to hinder the kind of content you desire to create on any platform, both social or traditional media. So these are some of the things I think are critical to reflecting, if you look at the context of media content creation and quality management.
Interesting. All right, I understand that there is a particular report on labor inspection and migration from your stables. Could you brief us on this, and how can we leverage on the results from the research?
Very good. That project is an eye-opener in terms of how many foreigners are living in the country legally, and of course what they do, and the companies that employ them, and of course what qualifications they have even before coming into the country, even where they are coming from, what country are they coming from. The concentration of Americans in Nigeria, we now know. The concentration of Europeans living in Nigeria, we now know. The concentration or the number of Russians in Nigeria, we now know. Of course, we know these numbers are not absolute, they are dynamic, they change over time. But one basic thing that we now know is the fact that it's now a baseline with which we can relate to when we want to query or make inquiries on some of these numbers.
Do you think responsible journalism is still being practiced?
Yes, I would say yes, because of the fact that, in spite of the challenges within the kind of political leadership and of course the kind of economic, and funding challenges, media professionalism has been upheld, in Nigeria. You can compare Nigeria with other countries and you could also come to the realization that indeed Nigeria has not done badly in terms of, quality and independence of the media. We have strong civil society space. We have strong advocacy, engagement and so on, that you could hardly have your way, no matter how strong your government or your state actor activities could be imagined or acted upon. So, of course, we know oftentimes you have conflict of interest, where you have the state interest and you have the societal interest. And so the media platforms and structures we have in the country has been able to manage these two so well enough that we have not had much issues around, issues of abuses and so on. Of course, we still have pockets of challenges on having to make sure, the media enjoy the limitless freedom they are supposed to enjoy to ensure that there's, that quality and independent reportage of issues and activities of the society. I know the government is very much concerned as to what kind of, security, report and news, that the media turn out, and I think that is understandable. And of course, we also know that is also one of the reasons why the government has come very strong on issues of regulating, the social media space. But all of this, again, is something that with strong, engagement, understanding, and conversations around these issues, there could be that agreement and resolution as to what is the best way forward for the people, the society, and of course other stakeholders within this space.
All right, Nigerians are warming up for the 2023 general elections, and how do we make the media space more effective and vibrant?
Yes, one of the critical responsibilities of the media is to actually shape opinions, political opinions, and set the agenda for the politicians, particularly when you are talking about, election years, like the 2023 elections. You cannot have a sane society and very robust, civil and very active political society without media and of course the media space engaging the people with every sense of responsibility, sense of ownership, and of course patriotism. The truth is, for every election and for every country that engages in election, the media plays critical role, in determining the outcome of that election. The importance of the media cannot be overemphasized. Number one, to shape the conversation. The people need to be politically enlightened, and the media has that responsibility to make sure that they shape the conversation along this narrow path. And then secondly, that the media set the agenda. Agenda setting is critical in any election. If you miss the agenda setting, you are literally going to have, the electorate that are so confused to vote, recklessly and without any purpose or direction. And so agenda setting is very close to having to shape the conversation also. That you set the agenda both for the political class to keep their eyes on the ball, and then in the process produce the best of the candidates who has the character, the capacity, and the competence and the experience to deliver good governance to the people. And that, I think, is the critical conversations that we should have on the road to 2023.
Interesting. Dr. Arume Salifu, Executive Director, Africa Youth Growth Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us on Insight.
Thank you, my pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Amina Mohammed, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Agencies and stakeholders to proactively tackle these challenges.
Women in most countries of the world constitute about 50% of registered voters.
Williams, reporting for Dateline 360.
In Jos, Caleb Gochin, Dateline 360.
Dateline 360. Shidi Okrafo.
For Dateline 360.
In Lagos, Michael Olaleye.
Reporting for Dateline 360.
I am Omosola Omojola. Thanks for tuning in to Dateline 360.
And that's it on this episode of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Odikbo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Be your brother's keeper. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.